This video will be about installing Red Hat 9 Linux. First thing you need to do is to boot from the installation CD. And in order to do that, you're going to have to hit delete on your keyboard as the computer powers on. That's going to get you to a BIOS screen that looks similar to this. And what you're going to have to do is go to boot, and you're going to have to change the boot order to make your CD-ROM drive boot first. So we're going to use our cursor keys. We're going to go down to CD-ROM, and then we'll hit the plus sign to move it up. And then we're going to exit, and we're going to save the configuration changes. Here you see the Red Hat 9 Linux install screen, and here you simply hit enter, and it's going to go into the graphical install mode. Okay, here you're given the option to test your CDs to see if they are good or bad. Reason you might want to do that is Linux install can take from 1 to 2 hours depending on the speed of your machine. You don't want to get to, let's say, hour number 2 only to find out that your third CD has been a bad burn. So if you want to test your CDs, you can just simply hit enter, and you can see it's highlighted on OK, and what it's going to prompt you to do is insert the CDs, and it's going to take a couple minutes, and then it's going to tell you if it's OK or if you need to reburn them. For now, we're going to use our cursor key, highlight skip, and then we're going to hit enter. Okay, so now we see we have control of our mouse. We have some colors on the screen. It's no longer command line. So what Red Hat has done, it's gone through a basic hardware detection. It's found a video driver, a basic video driver, and your keyboard and mouse. So all we have to do is move the cursor bottom right hand corner. We'll click next. You can also use your keyboard and hit enter. It's asking you for language selection. We're going to keep it on English, and we're going to hit enter. Keyboard, it's safe to hit enter if most people are probably using the English keyboard. For others, you can pick a different language keyboard setup. Most common probably would be Dvorak as an alternative. We're going to hit enter to go next. Here we're looking at the mouse configuration. It should be highlighted on the appropriate mouse that you have. If not, what you can do is you could simply use your cursor and pick a different one. But for now, we'll just hit enter. On this screen, we see 4 options for installation. We have personal desktop, workstation, server, and custom. What we're going to do is we're going to pick custom. And the reason we want to do that is we want to see all the options that we can choose, and we want to have flexibility in determining what packages we install. If you don't want to go through any of that, if you want to have Red Hat or your whatever Linux distribution you're using, if you wanted to automatically partition everything and pick the packages, then the top 2 will work just fine. But since you want to switch completely and you're going to wipe out your computer anyways, it's probably better to go with custom. And then we'll click on next. Okay, here we're looking at the disk partitioning setup. And what partitioning is it's going to take your hard drive and it's going to chop it up into pieces called partitions. And you can have Red Hat do it for you automatically, which is by default, or you can have it manually done, which means you're going to set up the sizes and file systems. So we're going to click on manual, and we're going to go next. Okay, it says it might say on your computer device HDA is unreadable, and what that means is HD stands for hard drive. A means it's the first hard drive in your computer. So the second hard drive in your computer would be HDB. The third hard drive would be HDC, and so on. So what we're going to do, it's asking if you want to erase all the data, and we'll click on yes. It's also saying your second hard drive was unreadable. Here it's also saying my second hard drive is unreadable. You can see HDB, which is fine. I'll click on yes. Now if you've migrated your data to a second hard drive, you probably don't want to click on yes, because this is going to erase your second hard drive. So if you have a second hard drive, you're going to click on no. Here we're looking at the screen that actually allows us to partition and choose the file types and the sizes. You can see it lists my two hard drives here, HDA and HDB. There's no partitions on HDA, so we're going to click on it to highlight it. And then you're going to click on new, because you're going to make a new partition. At the bare minimum, Linux needs a slash partition and a swap partition. You can see here it's asking for mount point, and mount points are similar to Windows, where we have Windows C drive, a D drive, a E drive. It's basically a name for the partition. So here we have a mount point, and you can either type it in or you can click the drop down arrow, and we'll pick the slash or root partition. Now it's asking for a file system type. ext3 is fine. You could pick others, but we'll leave it on ext3. The modern Linux distributions like SUSE 9.1 and Mandrake 10, they'll give you other file system types like journaling file system and Riser. But for now, we'll choose ext3. We have allowable drives. We'll select the first one. And on mine, I'm going to unselect HDB. Reason for that is I don't want this partition to span across two drives. I just want it on my first drive. And now for size, we're going to pick whatever is appropriate for you. But for here, on my computer, we're going to pick 5,000 megabytes, which is 5 gigs. And then we're going to click OK. Here you can see it's going to make the first partition, ext3, it's going to format it, and it's 4,997 megabytes. And this is because the megabytes and the gigabytes are rounded off to generally 1,024. So it's going to be a little less than what you actually picked. Now it hasn't made the partition just yet because you're still on the screen. When you go down here and you click next, then it's actually going to format and chop up your hard drive. Now we're not done yet. We're going to click on this free space here, and we're going to click on new, and we have to make our swap partition. Now the swap partition doesn't have a mount point because it's automatically mounted for you. You can't do anything about it. So what you're going to have to do is on file system type, you're going to click the drop down menu, and you'll see swap. And you can see where it says mount point, it says not applicable. We're going to keep this on the first hard drive. And then for size, we'll make it about 1 gig, which is 1,000 megs. And then we'll click OK. And you can see we have our ext3 partition and our swap partition. We've got a little free space, but we won't worry about that too much. Here we're looking at the bootloader configuration screen. And then you usually don't need to mess with this, and you can simply click on Next. Only time where you might want to change some options around is when you have a dual boot system, which is you want Linux and Windows, let's say. And if you're going to do that, you might have to change what's default, because you can see here Red Hat Linux, it's default because it's the only operating system. But you might want to have Windows as default, or you might want to have Linux as default. It all depends on your personal preference. But for now, we're going to click on Next. Here it's asking for a network configuration. It's found my Ethernet card, and it's going to be activated when I boot up. If you have multiple Ethernet cards or you have wireless, you might want to click on Edit to change things around. But these settings are usually okay. And we'll click on Next. Here we're looking at the firewall configuration page, and what you see is we have three options: high, medium, and no firewall. Since we're learning and we want to live a little dangerously, let's click no firewall, and then we'll click on Next. Here we're asked to pick additional languages if we need any, and English is fine here. It's already selected, so we'll click Next. On this screen you're asked to pick your time zone and your city, so you just scroll to the approximate location of your city, and you can see down at the bottom here it tells you the country and city that you've picked. So we're going to pick Los Angeles here. Obviously you're going to pick whatever is appropriate. And then we'll click Next. Here we're asked to set the root password. Now root is a user that's similar to the administrator on Windows. This user can make any file, delete any file, basically can do anything on the system. In the business world and in the production environments, your root password is going to be very complex. Letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and symbols. But in our environment, we're just learning, so pick a password that is easy to remember. And then we'll click on Next. Okay, here we're asked for authentication configuration. We'll just click Next here. Here we're looking at the package selection screen. Now packages are groups of similar programs, such as paint programs, editors, 3D animation programs. One very important checkbox to check is select individual packages. It's going to give you more control over individual packages that you want to install later on. We're going to see that in the next screen. But for now, we'll click on Select Individual Packages, make sure it's selected, and let's run through it from the top. Definitely want the X Windows system. In Linux, you've got a choice between two desktops. It's a little different than Windows. In Windows, you've got the desktop and that's it. But in Linux, you've got GNOME and you've got KDE. It's a personal preference. You can install both if you want, but for now we'll select GNOME. On later installations, you might want to pick KDE just to see if you like it or not. As we scroll down, we've got editors. We definitely want those. Graphical internet, which is your browser, we want that. Text-based internet is good. Office and productivity. In your distribution it might be different, but usually Office and productivity means Open Office and other Office type programs that will open up Word documents and Excel documents. Sound and video might be good. Authoring and publishing if you want to do like PDF or HTML documents. Graphics. Games and entertainment if you want them. Server configuration tools is good. We'll check on that. Different servers like web server, mail server. We're going to leave those unchecked. Development tools, we definitely want to check those. Kernel development, X software development, GNOME software development. And if you're going to play around with KDE software packages, you probably want to select KDE software development also. You're going to need to select development because most programs that you will be downloading and installing later on are going to need some libraries that these tools contain. Without those libraries, your installation of new programs is going to be very difficult. I'm going to scroll down some more, and we'll select admin tools, system tools. We've got printing support selected, and that looks like everything. Now if you just want to install everything, rather than clicking on the separate icons, separate checkboxes, you might as well just click everything down here. It's going to automatically check everything above it. And you can see total install size is about 2.3 gigs. And we'll click on Next. Here we're given the option to select individual packages. This will only come up if you checked the individual package selection box in the previous screen right here. And what we can do here is the packages like amusements here, we can select and fine-tune down to single packages, single programs, what we want to install or not install. So if I want the game Free Civilization and nothing else, I would uncheck everything else and check Free Civ. So pick whatever applications you want and then click Next. Okay, it's asking you, it's about to install. This is the gut check time to see whether or not you want to wipe out everything and install Linux. We're going to click on Next. It's going to run through the CD, it's going to format your partitions, and it's going to install all the packages. Depending on your computer and how fast it is, it could take a couple hours or it could take 10 minutes if you have a really fast system. All the packages have been installed, and now it's asking if you want to make a boot diskette. In our case here, we're going to click on No and then click on Next. Here the installation is asking you what driver you want to pick for your graphics card. So you simply look through this list and find the appropriate one. And then you're going to click on Next. Now it's asking you for what monitor you have. Pick the appropriate one and click Next. If you have a laptop, then you might want to pick generic and one of these generic laptop displays that's appropriate for your machine. On this screen you're asked for color depth, which is the amount of colors it's going to display. True color 24-bit is 16 million colors. 16-bit is about 65,000 colors. You're also asked to pick a screen resolution. And you're also asked if you want a graphical login or a text login. We're going to stick with graphical for now and then click Next. Okay, it says your installation is complete. The CD should eject out, and then you click on Exit. Okay, we're looking at the Grub bootloader, which is the first thing you'll see after the BIOS post. What you're looking at is two options for booting up, one with SMP and one without. SMP stands for Symmetric Multiprocessing. We've got a Pentium 4 with hyperthreading, and so Linux sees it as two processors, and that's why it gives us this option. So we're going to pick that. It's going to go through the boot up sequence. As we come up from boot up, you can see that we have a welcome screen, and we have to do some last minute configuration before we actually get to our desktop. So we're going to click on Forward. Here it's asking for a user account. The reason you want to make a user account is because you don't want to be logged in as root all the time. Because logging in as root basically gives you the power to do anything. And since you're learning Linux, that might be a little dangerous. So here we're going to make a user account. You can make any username you want. And you can type in your full name. And make up a password. And click Forward in the bottom right corner. Select the appropriate date and time. Your sound card should be detected, and it should show the vendor and the model. And then you can click on Play Test Sound if you want. Then click on Forward. And Red Hat asks you if you want to register the system. We'll click No here. And if you want to install any other CDs, such as the documentation or some source code, you can click on Install here. But we'll click on Forward and Forward again. Okay, you're looking at the graphical login, and we're going to log in with our user and type in your password. And in a couple seconds we're going to actually be on our Linux desktop.